Kyle.
Hello, Jackie.
Welcome,
Welcome.
everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
It's just us.
It's just, yeah. But it's been a minute.
It has been a
I don't
minute.
want to ruin the magic of our podcast,
Right, the
but
facade.
we do not record weekly.
No, we do
or
not.
every other week.
No,
so
we don't. It's
probably been
It's been about
probably
almost,
a month.
Yeah, it's been about a month.
What are you up to?
Nothing.
What's been going on?
It's summer.
It is summer.
And it's going by really fast.
It is.
What about you? I mean, I honestly don't have anything. I wish.
Well, nothing podcast wise,
Okay, yeah, right.
to update you on, but tired as usual.
Right.
So, anything, tired for you? That's going on? Anything on your mind you want to share with
what I'm
the
tired
class?
of? Yeah, I will share with everyone. I'm tired of the heat. I'm very delicate, and I can't do the heat.
I would have never guessed that about you.
I can't. I just,
after you complained about the state we live in,
right?
And your
my allergies.
Your allergies.
Last one of the last episodes.
This is also not the place for heat.
No, it's not. And I am just. I don't know. Usually it doesn't usually I don't care, but it's also been like 90 plus degrees since like middle of June at this point. And there's just been maybe a couple of days here and there where it's not been. Right. And it's just, so I'm tired of it.
It's usually when it's pouring down rain.
Right. And I'm not even mad about that, but it's just the heat. It's
it's the humidity. Yeah. Right.
I feel like you and I are like sitting at on the porch of like an old folks home, like looking at we're like 80 years old. It's the humidity.
It's the humidity. The humidity is very high.
That's what gets you.
It'll get you. It'll get you.
Yes. So that's my tired. What about your tired? What are you tired of?
I think a lot of things, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I think this week, and this is a controversial, belief, but stop posting about your spouse and your significant other on social media.
I don't know that that's so controversial though, because I also agree
a lot of
with
people do it. That's why I say it's controversial.
Do you know what I love? This is a little bit of a side, but along that vein is people who share a social media profile, and you ask, which one have you cheated?
And it's like, oh, absolutely. Which one of you is insecure?
Right. Which one of you is insecure, or which one of you cheated?
Right. And it's like Facebook won't let you do two names, so it's always like their first names, but it's like
Danny,
it's like Carrie
N.
and Carrie and James. Yeah.
I was like Danny and Sandy or whatever. It's so good.
Well, I just think. Okay, if it's a little happy birthday post, sure, that's
Valentine's
okay.
Day, and
I don't know about that. I
personally don't. My favorite thing to post on Valentine's Day is Puritan Valentine's, but
I have to say what I love about you and producer Justin's relationship is that if I may share, this Valentine's Day, you both posted, and I thought this is going to be cute.
Yes,
I support their relationship, and I'm excited for them to share that with me. No. You both posted about your dog.
Yes, that was 100% accurate.
And I really loved that even more.
Yes.
I think what's most tired with me is when you tag each other in memes.
Okay.
Don't do that. Just send it to them.
Yeah.
I don't need to see it. I don't get it.
Do people not send it?
No.
To DM them?
Well, I have several people that will post it and it'll be like, oh, this is so us. I don't care.
Recently, one time I did actually tag Justin in something, but yeah, we just DM.
You've never done this. You've never done this.
Oh yeah, no.
No. This is just it's like oh, my baby does this to me, and it's like when she kisses you on the forehead or something stupid. Like I don't need to see that.
I'm sorry, I'm vomiting a little bit.
Or when they're like, oh, we've been together for 14 weeks and I just love them so much.
It's our 14-week anniversary.
Send that to them. I don't need to see that.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. It's very I think about that because that's how I was when I was like younger. I mean, I think everybody does that when they're like younger, but I cringe. I don't have a book face anymore, but I call it book face.
Oh, I was like, what?
No, I don't have Facebook anymore. I haven't had it for over 2 years now. And when how you could do like the on this day and you could see all your memories. Oh,
I have a time hop, and let me tell you,
that hurt. I mean,
hurts.
Some of the statuses I made when I was like 18, 19, I was.
Well, if we're pulling out receipts against ourselves, so I had a boyfriend in I was probably in college, probably 19, 20, young child, and I had put sometime, I don't know when it was, but it was like anytime I put a little heart, this status is about you, and then there's like posts after that of like lyrics and stuff, and I was like, oh my God. I would have made fun of myself.
Yeah, there were some rough ones for me. I don't remember anything specific other than like going out with, and then I like put my boyfriend's name. And you remember how you had like that little code for like it was like the ampersand thing that you made, like it could actually make a little heart like icon versus like the less than sign and the 3 or whatever. Oh, it was sad. Yeah,
it's sad.
I also feel like it's a mark, and this is just my personal opinion, as is most of this podcast.
As is all of this podcast.
If you're posting that much about your significant other, I feel like...
Who are you trying to convince?
Right. Why are you posting that much? I mean, Justin and I ever hardly post about each other. Maybe on birthdays and maybe anniversaries. That's typically that. And then Valentine's Day is reserved for Groot.
Right.
Because that's our day.
You mostly both post about your dog.
Yes, it's 100% accurate.
Which is fine, because Groot is my best friend.
Yes.
And it's fine.
And he loves you.
And he loves me.
Yes.
But I just, that Valentine's Day story is my favorite thing about the two of you, because it's so accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, stop posting. Stop that. Appreciation. I just have to appreciate my husband.
Then just tell them that.
Him.
Yeah.
Right. You live with him.
Or
tell
like
him.
write a nice letter or something like they can keep. Like, why are you I don't care about your life.
I don't care about, or take him to dinner or have sex. I don't care.
Yeah. Right.
Have sex with him.
Do whatever you got to do.
Do whatever he wants. Right.
Right. I'm with you on that.
Tired.
Well.
On that note.
I know.
What are we talking about? Because this is a Jackie episode. So Jackie I have no idea. Well, I have a sense of what
you have a sense of what
we're talking about.
Yes.
But other than that, I'm here to react and join in.
Yeah. So
when needed.
We talked off the air. That's a very fancy way to say it, but we talked off the air.
Well, we are famous podcasters.
Right. We're very rich and famous.
I have to say, sidebar, people do like the podcast, and I am pleasant. I don't mean to be a narcissist, but
right.
But
I'm getting lots of positive feedback
I am
as well.
too.
Everyone loves it. We're so popular.
Old news to me.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Same.
You and I have known for a long time.
We've had this.
That we're the shit, and that's.
I know. You know who's a big fan of is my father-in-law, Greg.
Shout out to Greg.
Shout out to Greg. He likes
Hi.
it. Yes, Greg. He likes it. Yeah. He's very educational. So, but today,
as is this podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk. Well, we'll probably do this more than once.
Yeah, because I don't want to become that podcast.
Yes, I don't. So we're not. Maybe we'll just do a disclaimer. We're not true crime.
No.
But we're going to talk. We thought it would be interesting to talk about maybe famous serial killers, famous people who committed some crimes.
It's just minor
crimes, and then talk about them, and if they had. There's a lot of them. Like I don't know about. Did you do like a psych testing class in grad school?
Not testing, but I did take a what was it called? But it was like about criminal behavior and psychology. What was it called? I don't remember, but it was fascinating because the guy that did it worked on the John Benet Ramsey case. Oh, I know.
I would have loved it.
I was living because he went through it. He went through it. He had crime scene photos. He had all the things.
You get to see crime scene photos? We have to talk about off air about this. I need to know more.
But it was wonderful. Do you know what his theory was? What happened to John Benet?
What?
The brother.
Did you not watch that documentary a couple years ago where they essentially said it was the brother and the parents covered it up?
No.
And
but that makes sense. Anyways.
But we're not true crime. But when I was in grad school, I had a psych. I don't remember what the title was, but it was psych testing, and we had to analyze testing of famous serial killers. So our big project was my group and I did. We got the Unabombers psych testing and and we did a whole thing, and he was very like his MMPI, his MCMI, and some other testing. Back in the day,
psychological testing.
Psych testing. You'll hear us call it psych testing just because it's shorter.
And it's cool.
Right.
Cool.
So we thought we would do that with kind of famous. We can't do anybody,
living.
That
Or are they living? Some of them might be living.
Some probably will be living.
But this isn't. We're just
talking about
the information we find on the interwebs.
Right.
Is also. Yeah.
Right. Disclaimer.
Legitimate.
Yes, I got. Well, so Justin and I recently watched this, and you said off the air you watched it too, which was the John Wayne Gacy, the conversation, like the tapes.
The tapes. John Wayne Gacy tapes.
So it's on Netflix. It's a 3-episode. Yeah, on the Netflix. It is a 3-episode documentary. Highly recommend.
Highly recommend.
It's,
now, do you do the murder podcast and all that? Are you a big fan? Producer Justin's shaking his head.
He
is.
He is a big fan.
I'm not a big fan.
Justin, we can plug them. They probably have no idea we exist, but Justin's a huge Crime Junkie fan. So if you listen to Crime Junkie.
No, I don't. Oh. Because I don't want to hear about, I want to hear about the psychology. Like, I want to know, how did they become rotten? I don't care about what they did. Right. I don't need to hear the gruesome, how many people buried in the basement. Yeah. I don't need that.
I like Crime Junkie because it's good. I can't listen to it often because it's a lot. So, but we'll talk about John Wayne Gacy today, which people may not know this, but I'm actually from the area that he committed all of his crimes in and where he lived. Actually, I have family that lived like a 5-minute drive from where he lived and committed all the crimes at. So, and my mom went to high school with one of his victims. So I thought it would be kind of cool.
So we have the tea.
Yes. So we have the tea.
We have the tea.
So I did this more as like an overview. I'm not going to go in depth because it's so much information.
This one's a lot, yeah.
I highly encourage people to watch the documentary because I'm going to reference that and Wikipedia, which is where I got most of this information.
So spoiler alert.
Yeah, so spoilers. So, well, if you don't know John Wayne Gacy, he...
spoiler alert, he was a serial killer.
Yeah, he was a serial killer.
And killed lots of people.
Yes, he killed lots of people. Right now, I think the count is 33, although he has admitted to upwards of 45, although they only found 33 bodies, and 29 of them were found in his home in the Chicagoland area,
which is just
in the crawl space.
The energy that he expended to get them in there.
Well, and you know what's funny? Did you realize that he was like 30 something years old? He was like a few years older than me, like when he did all these crimes.
And what have we done with our life?
Well, when you look at the pictures of him, you think he's like in his 40s or his 50s.
Because he is not.
No, and he was, his very, like some of his first crimes were when he was like in his 20s. So anyways, so about John Wayne Gacy. So I'm going to sort of break it down by childhood, early adulthood, and then kind of just a very short overview of like the murders and all of that. So he grew up with an abusive father, and his dad would call him dumb and stupid, which there was a lot in those tapes about that. Like because the tapes were interviews with his lawyers.
Right.
So he mentioned that a lot. But what I thought was fascinating, which I don't know if you found this fascinating too, was that when he was growing up, his dad spent a lot of time in the basement. And that was like his dad's special place. Do you remember that part where he was talking and saying how like his dad would lock him out of the basement? He'd put signs up. I can't remember what exactly he called it, but his dad, like something akin to like his special place.
It was like his that was his like sanctuary.
Zone. Right. So I thought it was very interesting. That's where he buried everybody.
Was it one of the psychologists or something was saying that like he was reliving the fantasy of his father abusing him by killing these people and putting them in the basement.
Yes. So
I don't know. That might be a stretch on my end. But.
Right. Well, I just thought that was very interesting because I don't know that I would have like thought about that when you think about his crimes, but I thought that was interesting. And he was bullied when he was a kid. If you've never seen pictures of him, he's short and he's a little overweight.
He's a chunky.
He's a short and stout, and he was very sick during his childhood. He spent a lot of time in the hospital. His father always accused him of faking, all the illnesses that he had. He actually had a heart condition, which is why he couldn't like do sports with other kids. So he had kind of like a weird childhood.
He was a weirdo.
Yeah, he's a little bit. And so I'm skipping lots of time, obviously, but when he was an early adult, he married a woman. I don't remember what her name was, but her dad owned a bunch of KFCs in Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
So they moved to Iowa. So he was managing KFCs, which is kind of where he got his start of doing what he was doing, kind of. But he ended up getting arrested there and charged with sodomy because he sexually assaulted the son of one of his friends. And I'm leaving so much out once again because there's just so much about that time period. But he ended up going to prison in Iowa. He got sentenced to 10 years. He only served 18 months because back then prison you could do time programs, get time cuts, and leave. So after he was done, he left the prison and they let him to do probation back in Chicago. So he moved back to Chicago after that. So
but they didn't find all that out until basically after they figured out he was murdering people.
Because no one really looked into his background. So if you don't know anything about John Wayne Gacy, so he was like an election judge. He was a huge community member. He was like the neighborhood block captain, like threw block parties at his house, threw block parties at the house.
Blue Owls?
that all the people were buried
under, right under.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Let's cook this pig that
right.
13 bodies are under.
Right. He was a clown. That sounds. And I was under the misconception my whole life that he like did this. He murdered all these guys as a clown.
That's what I thought too.
And he wasn't. That's just something he did.
He did later in life.
Yeah. He just did that for fun.
Yeah. I pictured him fully like murdering like 7-year-old boys as a clown. That is not at all.
No.
The vibe he was giving.
And so he was this clown. He was like
what was the clown's name?
Pogo the clown.
Pogo the clown.
Well, one of the kids who worked for him was like his sidekick and would go out with him, and that was on Wikipedia, and like Patches was the name, and I'm like, this is weird. The pictures of him as the clown are weird. The way he did his makeup, and a lot of they interviewed some clowns after all this came out about him and said the way he did his makeup was even kind of bizarre because he had like points up on his, like the lips around the clown. You know how it's like usually like a curve.
Rounded.
His is like a point, and they said that's kind of an interesting choice. They don't typically encourage clown makeup to be that way.
Wow.
So
even clowns have social status of what you do.
Yes.
Wow.
So yeah, and he served as what is it, like a parade? He was like the Polish parade leader thing. So and he owned his own business. He owned this construction company. They called it PDM. I think it was painting, design, and maintenance or something like that. I don't remember what it stood for.
Like that.
But he would primarily employ young boys.
Which red flag. That should have been red flag. Like
red.
These 19-year-old fair skinned, fair hair, like beautiful little boys.
Yes, they're also cute.
And like even people were saying like these were like they had no experience with this.
Most of them were like high school age, like 14 to like 18 years old. Some of them were older.
And they called him, what they call him, father or dad or something?
Did they?
They called him something.
He like prided himself on being like a mentor to some of these, and a lot of them had families. But when I talked to my mom, because I asked her about all of this because she lived through this, she said it was different because there was obviously no social media, and so all these kids went missing, and it was just sort of like, oh, they ran away, or like they maybe went to a different town. Well,
and this was what, the 70s?
This was like the early to late 70s.
So there was no like national like police database. There was no social media.
There's not much DNA. You see that in the documentary.
Right. So that's why they didn't even find out about like his previous charges because these precincts didn't talk to each other.
Right. So they tailed him for a while. When he came back, they started kind of being suspecting, but there was one boy in particular who went missing that the parents were like, no, this is not a runaway. He's a 15-year-old, which is kind of what triggered all of them going to his house and all of this. But first murder was in 1972. I think last murder was that would have been like 78 or 79, I think. Like I said earlier, murdered 33 people.
Yeah.
Did some really gross, brutal things.
Yeah.
Interesting though, if you think about just his life and everything, and I think he's like so interesting. I wish there was like actual personality tests like that he took from back then. I couldn't find anything specific about like he took an MMPI or an MMPI is like
were they even
probably
did they
not.
even have that back then?
I have no idea what they had back then. It's probably like lay on a couch and like talk.
Oh, it was
like
psychodynamic. So, absolutely.
Psych testing. I'm talking about the MMPI, like the MCMI. The MMPI is the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory. It's like 500 questions. They're all true, false.
You. Good job.
I know. I learned stuff in grad school. It's actually really cool. I had to take it in grad school, and then I had to score it on myself.
Oh God.
If
maybe we should share that. That's another pod.
That's another podcast.
We'll go over.
But it's like there's like 10 different scales that you can ping on. So I'm saying it would be interesting if he had taken that, because there's a couple scales that would have pointed to kind of like they're all different. The MCMI is like the Milan clinical something. It's another personality test. I don't remember that one as much, but so I couldn't find any.
I don't know that you really need those either to tell that he had something going on.
No,
I think we can tell.
Well, and the other thing that's interesting too is like that time frame. So like when I knew about this as a kid, I thought like it was a whole, like they talked about him being gay and he hated himself.
Right.
And like even watching that documentary, like a lot of those guys, well, they weren't gay. Some of them I think were, but like
some of them.
But I asked my mom about this, and she was like, "Well, you didn't really like back then." She's like, "We didn't really like talk about that. You didn't say anything." She goes, "A lot of the people." She knew one of his victims, and she said the family didn't want their son to be associated with him because of that.
Right.
So a lot of the families told people, "Oh, well, they ran away. They just, we don't know." One of his victims at the end, they said like was like one of the most recent identified ones, like most recently identified the remains last year, and said that, what did he call his mom and said, I'm gonna go to Chicago for a weekend, and then never. And I'm like, didn't anybody? And I asked my mom, I was like, isn't that weird though? Like nobody. And she was like, that was just kind of how it was. She was like,
because it's like, how do you find them back then? Right. Like,
right. You don't. They
don't have a cell phone.
No cell phone. No social media.
You have to call every hotel in Chicago. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, back then too, this was before they instituted you could file a missing persons report. It had to be 72 hours. Oh. So this is actually Gacy's whole thing triggered. One of his lawyers pushed for that in Congress to make to take off the time limit of filing a missing persons report, because the last kid who went missing, the parents were like, no, we want to declare him missing. He is missing. Is
it 24 hours now?
I think you can do it whenever.
Oh,
now.
Can you?
Yeah, I think it's whenever.
I thought it was 24 hours for some reason, because I always
thought
it was weird.
There are some places that won't let you do it.
Because I always thought it was weird, because for when kids go missing, if they're missing for more than 24 hours, the likelihood of them being found dead rises exponentially.
It increases.
I'm like, well, why then wait?
Right.
You know?
Well, and that was the whole thing.
Right.
Well, and for the last one, the last poor kid, so cute, that he murdered. Like, I mean, if they would have done it faster, they actually probably would have found him sooner. I mean, he still would have been, I think, dead, but they would have found him because he had actually not buried him in the crawl space. But the big thing about Gacy is that he buried all 29 people, or 28, I think one was in the garage, in his crawl space on top of each other.
I mean, it was a legitimate crawl space too.
Yeah. They had to tear up his house.
Right. So how did he do it? How did he get? Because
Did you see the
buried bodies on top of? Yes.
The trap door is like maybe like what, like a 1x2. I mean, it was
in like a tiny closet.
Yeah. And
so I'm like, how did he get a body down there? Dig, be able to dig a hole, because you can't stand up. You couldn't stand up in that crawl space.
My thought is,
and he was a big boy.
The only thing that I could think of was that he would like, I don't know. He had to. This is so gross, but my thought would be he had to have like dropped them down there. Like he probably just like push them down there, and then he had to get himself, because he's big, like there's no way unless he either went down there by himself first and then pulled their body down. Ugh. But I mean, yeah,
but how do you get a shovel? I mean, a shovel is probably taller. Do you think he used hands? Like,
part of the documentary was saying how those kids that worked for him would like go in his crawl space and help bury more, and then he would end up like putting it's so jacked. It's so
messed up.
It's so fucked up.
But
here we are. Right. So they found 29 bodies on his property. They ended up having to like rip up the whole house. They ended up leveling the whole house.
Yeah, which probably for the best.
Yeah.
Are those spirits trapped there? Are you kidding me?
Well, somebody bought it in the 80s and built a house. There's a house
haunted.
there.
Haunted.
Well, it's not the house. They
I know, but it's haunted. No.
I know.
That ground is spoiled.
I'm not like this, but I would have definitely had holy water spilled somewhere.
I didn't even know what I would have had, like a priest, a rabbi, like
you call everybody. I need everybody.
A witch doctor.
We need everyone here.
I need everyone here.
Oh my God, I can't imagine
doing rituals all at once.
Yeah, I can't imagine either. And like I said, it's like a 5-minute drive from a couple of my family members' home, so I know that area very well. I mean, and the houses are very close together. It's very like single family home. So I don't know how he got away with it without people noticing. Like, I just don't. I mean, I don't know. Like kids just going missing
because he was this upstanding.
He was a big.
I mean,
he was a pillar in his community.
A pillar in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, how do all these other people, these Catholic priests, these principals at schools,
right?
It's because of that. Because you would never think,
right? And a lot of people didn't believe it, and even the police were tailing him. And Gacy had called some of his, because he was well connected, and asked, have them stop following me. And the police were like, no, like he is doing something. We just can't figure it out. He ended up getting busted because he ended up giving marijuana to a kid at a gas station while he was kind of becoming more and more erratic because they were following him. And so they arrested him on that. And then that's how they got him in custody.
I think that's my favorite part about serial killers is like, they're so like calculated, but then when they break, they break. And it's fascinating.
It's so
fascinating.
But speaking of breaking, let's take a break.
We should take a break.
And then we'll talk a little bit about what it was found that he was diagnosed with and whether what you and I think about this.
Oh.
So we'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
We're gonna keep talking about serial killers.
Serial killers. Sorry, my hit comes out in me. We know this. It happens.
Just ever so slightly sometimes.
Ever so slightly.
It's okay.
Oh God.
So we were talking about John Wayne Gacy,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I said, I couldn't find any psych testing on him, which was really sad for me. But there was information in the documentary, and there was things online allegedly diagnosed with. So Wikipedia actually told me this. I didn't know, but he had psych testing when he had his first crime back in Iowa, and the doctors had found him to be antisocial personality disorder, and they said he had no remorse for his crimes, that no form of treatment would be beneficial for him, because sometimes that's how it goes with people who have antisocial personality disorder, and they thought, oh well.
Right. Which all the kids that listen know what that is.
Right.
We talked about it.
Right. We've had our personality disorder episodes.
So you were all learned.
Right.
And know exactly what we're talking about.
You are educated, and you should know what this means. So
if not, go back and listen to episode that is Cluster B.
Yeah, Cluster B.
Cluster B.
So they thought that at the time, that was in the 60s. I forget when he moved there. I think it was in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when he committed his crimes, of course, as some people do, they like to try to plead insanity. Illinois is a plead insanity state, which I can kind of talk about because I worked on when I did my internship, I worked on a not guilty by reason of insanity unit. So Illinois has, instead of pleading just guilty or not guilty, you can plead not guilty by reason of insanity. You can plead guilty but mentally ill. There's a couple other ones. So, of course, Gacy, and I say this because some people... There are some crimes where people are legitimately not guilty by. It's very hard to. It's very hard. It's very difficult to be found not guilty by reason of insanity. But so he pretty quickly, and then they even kind of mentioned this in the documentary too, where he started saying, I blacked out. I have no recollection of my crimes. I don't even know what happened. He claimed that some of his victims attacked him first. That it was defense. So at one point he tried to say he had multiple personality disorder, which now is dissociative identity disorder, DID. Which I don't know how you personally feel about DID. I have lots of feelings that probably aren't the nicest.
Yeah, I probably am with you on
okay.
that one. Yeah.
I don't think
a believer.
I'm a non-believer unless you get a brain scan and you can show me that your brain scan changes when you're in your altered state. So John Wayne Gacy decided, I have multiple personality disorder.
I have that.
And so he
was the original TikToker.
Right.
He was doing the TikTok dances. And I have DID because I murdered 28 people. And so exactly.
He told the doctors that he had 4 distinct personalities. I don't remember all of them, but the one that he said committed all the crimes was called Bad Jack. And so he drew a picture of his crawl space, his little basement area, to show the police where the bodies were. And after he did that, he was like, "Oh, Bad Jack must have shown you where that was." And I was like, "No, thank you."
That Bad Jack.
So that's
what kills me about DID is people are like, "Okay, this one is 27 and is named like Jerry."
Right. No. Yeah, he had I think he had a clown one, he had the Bad Jack, he had a child one, and then like a fourth one. I don't remember what they all were. So he underwent 300 hours of psych testing before his trial. That is a massive amount of testing.
What would you even do? I mean, they're just getting background and history on it.
It didn't say the reference on Wikipedia was a book that I almost want to read now to see if it goes more in depth about it, but they didn't say exactly what it was. I assume it was like tests. I assume it was interviews, because part of psych testing you have to do interviews.
Yeah. That would be, even back then they didn't even have enough psych tests for him to be able to do 300 hours worth.
No, and they actually were able to. A lot of the people that testified in his trial were in this documentary, which was shocking because I shouldn't say it like that, but it was surprising because that was 50-ish years ago now. So 3 of the experts for the defense testified after all of these hours of testing and whatever interviews. They were sure that he should be diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder, which I promptly was very irritated by.
Yeah, very against that.
And they said
I don't see that.
Some of the support was that he just blacked out. There were a couple people who survived some of his attacks that he dumped somewhere, they were unconscious, but he there was one guy, and That guy actually testified, believe it or not, for the defense in the trial and said that Gacy didn't know what he was doing because of like how heinous the attack was. He's like, he surely couldn't have been, mentally competent to do that. And I have lots of personal feelings about that.
I mean, that is some Stockholm syndrome, right? Like,
right.
That is Patty Hearst, like with the, what was it, the something nation or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that, but that's again how they get away with it, because it's like, well, for sure that wasn't him because he's a pillar.
The crimes were so horrible. We should say that, and so I don't. We will probably at some point do an episode on psychosis, or I guess it will probably be another Jackie episode.
That'll be another Jackie episode where I'll sit here and go,
I just a lot of people think, when people think insane, they think schizophrenia. That's what they think. That doesn't always mean that, but it's actually statistically more likely that people who have schizophrenia will be victims of crimes and actually commit crimes themselves.
Yes.
Also, somebody with schizophrenia who, as sick as they said he was, would not be able to even probably string a coherent sentence together, let alone commit 33
Right, it wouldn't
plus
come
murders.
And go conveniently when you're just murdering somebody.
Right.
Plus, you picked them up and took them to your home.
Right, like there was, there was a the way that he did it, when we didn't talk about it, but it was a very, very well thought out, very planned, very meticulous, how he even disposed of them in his crawl space and all of that.
Right. It was very consistent. Right. You don't see that consistency with someone with psychosis or schizophrenia.
No. Right. And most of the time, if they do commit some type of crime, they're going to sit there and wait for the police to show up. I knew a lot of guys who did that because they didn't know what else.
Because they're like, damn, what did I just do?
Well, or they were just so sick that somebody was like, you have to wait. And they're like, okay. And they'll just sit there and you're like, oh, okay.
Sounds good.
So I don't agree with that. But then they had an expert for the prosecution who interviewed Gacy and also found him to be antisocial personality disorder. But they also felt like he was sort of on the range of psychopath, sociopath than he was antisocial, which I actually very much agree with.
Because they are very different.
Right.
Because again, the kids know this already.
Yes.
But a personality disorder is very pervasive, or it's very, like, there's no way he could have kept that facade with the antisocial, whereas psychopaths do. Yeah. They have, that
Oh, he was, and I didn't mention it, but he divorced his first wife after he got arrested. He got remarried, married a woman with 2 kids. She lived in that house that he committed all the murders. She had moved out. They had moved out, but he had a whole, like we said, he was a pillar of his community.
Pillar of the community.
Had done, parades and was a clown and had barbecues and was the, the local block party captain. It's very, like, if you think about, like the psychopathy checklist, I don't know, like if you know much about that. Okay. There's, it's Hare's psychopathy checklists, like the PCL 20 or whatever. And it's 20 different, facets of psychopathy. I would say he probably checks most of them. We can do an episode on that at some point.
We should both do it. Share our answers.
Oh my God. Well, and like one of them is, like superficial charm, the glib part. That's what they call it. It's very much, he had that power. He met like presidents' wives. He knew some of it, was no remorse for his actions. There's 20 of them obviously, but he checks a lot of them. So thoughts, Kyle? Would you agree, disagree with the diagnosis?
Not the schizophrenia, not the multiple personality. No, that's gone. But I think definitely he was a psychopath. Absolutely, because he was calculating. He, no remorse. Right. I think to the one story on there where he had the guy stayed the night because it was snowing or something. Yeah. And he came in and like it started out weird where they were talking about like porn and he was like, have you ever seen something? And then was that guy who survived
and who was like gutted for life about this whole was it the guy and I that guy was so sweet.
And he was so nice. But like how he like came in and tried to like do something, and then when he was like, I don't want to do this, he was like, oh, I'm just kidding anyways. Like I don't love that happened, but I love that about like just the craziness of it where like he comes in to try to rape you and you stop him and he's like, oh, I'm just kidding around.
What? Yeah. Well, and like,
then it's like, but I'll kill you if you tell anybody.
Right. Well, and he scared that guy so badly. The guy never really talked about it. And then he saw him on TV. And like when he was telling, the story of him seeing it, and he was like, oh, that was the guy who did all that to me. But yeah, there's just.
Can you imagine that guy, like survived. Like, talk about the survivor's guilt.
There was a handful. There wasn't that many. There was like at least there could have been more, but they only showed like 2 or 3 of them in the documentary. One of them who's still alive. I don't know about the other guy. He wasn't in the documentary, so I'm not sure if he was alive anymore. But I don't like, how do you, and the poor guy, he was like, he goes, I can't speak to what like happened to all those guys, but I know certainly what they saw that night, when they died. And I was like, oh God, that's terrible. Like, oh.
I mean, what do you think about how, because there's a whole science on serial killers and how they come to be. So obviously what's the stereotype is overbearing father, absent mother, right? That's the stereotype, I think. But I think it was the opposite, legit, wasn't it?
For him, it was the opposite, though. His mom was very much, his mom, I think he had a sisters. His mom and his sisters were very much on his side. Like the dad, like I said, he
was abusive.
Yeah, he was abusive. He drank. Gacy called him an alcoholic. And so you can see sort of where some of that formed in his child. Like, because I think you have to look at the whole picture of a person. Right. You can't just look at, believe it or not, you can't just look at their crime and just make a decision about how they are. Right. You have to kind of look at everything that went into how he was. And I mean, if you look at it starting from the day he was born until the day he died, because he was executed for his crimes. He was on death row. He was executed in the 90s, I think in like 94. If you look at it, I mean, it's very much, I don't know, like you can just see it. I can see it from the day he was born, or at least when he was a child. Yeah,
well, I think, so I remember, again, from that class that I took, have you heard of the I think it's called the McDonald's triad?
No, I've not heard of that.
And it's something that when they look back on people like serial killers, it was 3 things that all of them showed in childhood that can predict them becoming serial killers. And I honestly I don't know what they are. I remember one was bedwetting. Oh, it was bedwetting, I think setting fires, and animal cruelty.
I'm looking it up.
I remember that from that.
Arson, cruelty, and then bedwetting. Yeah. Yes.
Because that was the bedwetting one that always got me. But, I mean, that is a sign of abuse. I mean, bedwetting is a sign of abuse in young kids.
Yeah, when you look at conduct disorder, which is the precursor to antisocial personality disorder, it's cruelty to animals and arson are part of that. Bedwetting is not, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I know.
He's an interesting one, I think. Oh, the other thing that I didn't mention that I also didn't know, but when he was executed, they removed his brain. There's some woman out there who likes to does studies on serial killers, and one of his brains, so she's in possession of his brain. Okay. And his brain was found to have no abnormalities to it.
Interesting.
Not to say that you can't have mental illness and not have like an abnormality in your brain,
but it calls into question physical. Biological,
right? Like there was no head trauma, no not that she's
no missing of the brain,
right? There's no missing part of the brain, but yeah, she still has this brain, just chilling. Yeah, she's a bunch of people's brains too, I think.
Is she like a scientist or just like some random woman?
I forget what her name is. I'm trying to look her up really quick because I was like, why?
Who has John Wayne Gacy's brain?
Yeah, no, it's on his Wikipedia. Let me find it because I was shocked. I was like, why would you want?
I didn't know that. They didn't talk about that in the.
No, she has his brain. So she has interviewed Gacy and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopaths. She is still alive. She's a forensic psychiatrist.
And she said dibs on that brain. That is interesting because I think.
She has a book, My Life Among the Serial Killers.
Oh God, that sounds like
I've spent some time
a dark read.
I've spent some time when we do the psychopath episode. I can talk a little bit more about that because I have worked with a couple psychopaths, and it is not something that you really want to do. I'm just going to be honest. It's very unsettling. Yeah, I want to say it's scary because it's not really that scary, but it's like very because it's unsettling.
There are truly evil people in this world. But so what do you think? I mean, if there's not a physical abnormality in the brain, what do you think? What's the tea?
I think he was rotted from childhood. I hate to say it like that, but that's the only way I can. I think he got rotted from childhood. You talk a lot about like maladaptive coping skills. You talk a lot about parents. The dad obviously very much. Right. I think. I don't know what happened with the dad. Like they didn't really talk about the abuse very specifically in the documentary, and I couldn't really find anything specific about what the dad did. But I think there was probably some abuse that took place in the basement that like shaped.
Do you think it was sexual abuse?
He was sexually abused as a kid, but it wasn't by his dad. There was very small mentions of like
wasn't the babysitter.
Yeah,
or
like he was molested as a child.
Right.
So I don't know if that happened in the basement, but I think there's stuff that happened with his dad. Like I don't know if the dad took him to the basement and like would abuse him like physically. The dad would yell at him and obviously called him dumb and stupid. So I think he got
other things,
right.
I think.
And so and then during that time, I mean, he was born in the 40s. So I mean that there wasn't it's not like it is today with like mental health and we're trying to. So I don't think he ever got to the point where he overcame that positively. I think it made him rotted. I hate to say it like that.
But what, like, because, I mean, you and I see people who are physically abused all the time.
Right.
They don't murder people that we know of.
Right.
But
right.
What's the next, what takes you from,
I think,
like, to murder?
I think a lot of it is just like power and control. And so for him, I won't talk about what he did because I think it's what he did to all those guys was completely heinous. But I mean, a lot of it is just power and control.
Right.
And so for him, I think, that's what he liked. And he was a very powerful person, so he had power, which is why, a lot of the people who survived his attacks were like, I was scared of him. He seemed like he was a bigger guy. He could kill me. But I think I don't know for him where it went like different. I think he started off sexually abusing like boys. I mean, that's what he did. And then he started murdering. And I think maybe it triggered something in him. I'm not sure. I don't know what I've never really.
Well, I mean,
and you can't really take what he said because he kind of he was very much like, oh well, they attacked me, and he changed his story multiple times.
I mean, he was probably a narcissist.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. If you listen to some of those tapes.
I mean, that's where the tapes come, and that's what happens is you get them going, and they just talk about themselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's what he did. Yeah.
And it's just like, look how smart I was, and it's like,
well, you weren't really that.
But you really weren't.
You
really were stupid.
I mean, I think he was clever in the sense that he was able to hide it. Right, but I actually don't think he was smart.
But where do you? I mean, again, it's like, because I don't think I could not be mad at anybody. I think enough to murder them. I can't even think. I mean, not even to be funny, but like, I really don't think I could ever murder. And there's a lot of people I don't like. Let me just put that out there.
I'm just sitting here thinking.
But like, how could I murder somebody?
I think I think for him specifically, I think it becomes power and control, and I think for him, I think he really became to the point where he was like, I can abuse this person. Let me see how far I can go.
Do you think some of it too was some of his like internalized like homophobia getting externalized?
And that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I think some of it is how he felt about himself, because he I don't want to say marketed himself, but he was kind of marketed himself as like a bisexual, because like his second wife.
He did. He said, I'm bisexual, which, that's, we've all been there. We've all been bi first and come out gay later.
Right. But yeah, I think there was a lot of internalized about that. And I think some of that comes again from his dad.
His father. Yeah. I wonder if his dad said things like about his sexuality or called him like a, a fag or something.
Yeah. That's what I think. I think there was a lot of internalized. Because I think
he said he got bullied and was called like.
Yeah, they thought he was. And he
was.
Well, and
allegedly,
and it's that time frame, that time period. I mean, that wasn't talked about.
That's true. There were no outlets. I mean, even
right. So it was like you either live with it and you marry, a woman and you pretend like this isn't a part of you, or
you murder people.
Right, or you murder people.
Well, he did both. So again, what was
right,
for him? Like, what was the?
I don't know. What do you think? I mean,
I don't know. That's what drives a person to. I mean, was it it accidentally happened the first time and he was like, honestly, shit, that was amazing.
I honestly think this is genuinely, I think the first time was kind of an accident. I think he was trying to like autoerotically asphyxiate the person. Yeah. He ended up killing him and he liked the way it felt.
And he was like, ooh.
And then he was able to get away with it and then just kept doing it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about the first one. Because the first one, he says the guy tried to attack him. He came to his, Gacy said the victim came to his door, tried to, murder him. And so he killed him in self-defense because he had a knife. But when they found the remains, I mean, none of that was true. A lot of his victims had stuff like cloth or some type of something stuffed down their throats. Some of them had stuff stuffed up their butt. In some of those,
which again, like,
what are you? I just think there was some like inner hatred that bled out, and then I think the first time was probably an accident, or
Yeah.
Maybe accidents giving it not enough credit, but I don't think he meant to do it. And then I think he liked the way it felt, and then he just kept doing it.
It just went too far, yeah.
Because I'll never I had to take a violence and risk assessment class because I did my master's in forensics, so we did a lot of like, you know, offender classes, like, you know, how do you treat an adult offender, a child, youth police, all that stuff. And we had to take a violence and risk assessment class. And I'll never forget my professor. She used to work at federal prisons. She worked at Fort Leavenworth, and she said the most dangerous person is when you mix sex and violence, and that's exactly what he did.
Absolutely.
And she said, don't ever forget that. She goes, if you meet a person who is mixing, like, you know, sexual pleasure with violence, be very careful, because they can be a very dangerous individual, and they will do whatever it takes. And once you cross that line, you're gone.
Right.
And so if you look at a lot of serial killers, a lot of like serial rapists, I think of The Night Stalker, if you've ever seen that documentary on Netflix, Richard, whatever his name was.
Richard Ramirez.
Yes. When I watched that,
Nasty.
Gross.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's exactly what that is too. It's like mixing sex with violence equals.
I mean, I think that's why I find this so fascinating, because it's like, where did those wires get crossed? Sex and violence, because those are two. Yeah, it's literally opposites. I would say, because sex is sorry, my heteronormativity is going to sneak out in me here for a minute, but it's procreation. Right. It's pleasure. Right. It's supposed to feel good. It's supposed to make life and all that, whatever. And violence is, killing people. Right. So they're literally, I would say, opposites.
I know, but
where do you cross those and say, to kill someone to get off?
I think when you're that sadistic, you can't
control it.
Well, you can't get off on, whatever you use, whether it's, regular. So then you start adding more, I don't know. I don't want to say like, you start adding more, I guess, I don't want to say abnormal, but more different types of things to try to, like, I don't know.
Well, it's like an addiction, right? Like you have to up the ante.
Yes, you have to like up the ante every time. So it's like,
it's like, it was choking porn. Well, now they have to be like,
that's what I'm thinking,
cutting porn.
Yes, like that's what's going on in my brain. I'm like, it's
that's why we do a pod together, because we're two rotten people. I know. I'm like, on the same page.
It starts with regular. It starts with regular porn. You're like, okay, yeah, this works, and then it's like after a while, this isn't doing it for me. Okay, let's add choking. Okay, choking after a couple months, no. Then it's like, let me add people getting beat before they have sex. Then let's you just keep adding. And then you kind of cross that line where you can't maintain any sort of like sexual pleasure unless someone's getting hurt. Right. That's where.
Well, and then that's where it's like, now I have to do this again, because you can't. There's nothing more than murder, right? You can't like, what's next? There's nothing next. You've hit the plateau. So that's where. Yeah. I think these serial killers start doing that, because it's always the same, right? Like, it's always the same. If you watch Criminal Minds, which is a great show, by the way.
It is. I've not watched him.
Derek Morgan, hi. Yeah. How are you doing? But
I haven't watched him forever, but yes, it is a good show.
It's the MO, modus operandi. Like, because it's the same. Like, they got to play out this, because there's nothing, they can't go to that next level. So that they've hit that plateau of, I have to murder this person or this certain event. For
Gacy, I think his thrill was, I want to see how I can incapacitate you, because he would handcuff. I mean, he would start by handcuffing them. Mm-hmm. And I think it was it was like a game. It was like, like predator prey type of stuff. It's like, how can I, and one guy got out of the handcuffs and handcuffed Gacy. And then Gacy was like, oh, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, man.
Which I love that.
That guy was precious too. He was like, I was a wrestler, and he tried it. And he's like, I just kicked him out under me and I handcuffed him. And he was like, oh, I'm just kidding, man.
Right. But then
you didn't say anything. I'm like, it was.
But that's how you don't have, you don't have multiple personalities, because it doesn't switch off like that. No. You can't tell me that what do you call him, Bad Joe or whatever his name was?
Bad Jack
did that and then ran away. No. You knew you couldn't control him and you were done.
Right. Well, and it sucks, because I just think about these guys who escaped. Why didn't they say something? I mean, not that I don't know that they would have been believed anyway, because he was such a Gacy was so well known.
But again, you don't want to say I was almost raped by a man, right? Because then are you gay? Right. Are you a queer? Right. Right. How do you answer that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My mom said a lot of the families at the time didn't want their family associated with that, and which is stupid in my opinion, but it's different time, I suppose. I know. And my mom just said that a lot of them, just the families were just like, no, they ran away. We didn't know what happened.
What do you think? Like, what happened to serial killers? Because it seems like in like the 70s, like they were everywhere. But I think, where are they now?
Well, I think people are doing stuff now that we're going to find out about in 10 years.
Because I mean, I don't watch the news, but I don't
There's
ever hear about serial killers like this stuff.
There's a few that are actually Crime Junkie has an episode. We might have to delve into that at some point. Of a more modern day one, like within the last like 10, 15 years. I just don't. I don't know. I don't think they advertise them that much. I also don't. You got to be careful too. I mean, now I don't know how you can do it now with like
I guess it's true because like
tracks
right,
and
it's
that.
like people. It was hitchhikers and like nobody does that anymore.
Oh, I know. Well, and I told my mom, I was like, isn't it? I'm like, why? I'm like, didn't the last guy that they identified who called his mom and was like, who lived in Minnesota and was like, I'm gonna go to Chicago for a weekend. I'm like, wasn't that weird? I'm like, you guys just left for and she was like, sort of. She goes, it wasn't, she's like, it wasn't like it is now where, you could have a phone location, you had a cell phone, it was pay phones, it was hotel phones.
Right.
It was,
and how do you know where to call? Like there's 10 billion hotels in Chicago. How do you know which one to call?
Right. And so all of those things.
But then they don't come home after a week and you're like, well, guess my son's gone.
I know. I kept like pressing her. I'm like, isn't this, why wouldn't? And she just was like, that's just kind of how it was.
They say it was a different time, and it surely was. It surely was.
She kept saying, she was like, it's just how it was. We just didn't, people ran away. People assumed, went to a different state.
It makes me wonder, especially. Oh, have you seen I don't think you have. I think we've talked about this off the air, but the Ted Bundy one.
No, I haven't.
But it was Zac Efron.
He is the one person.
Oh, I would have been murdered. I would have been dead.
He's the one serial killer that I can't watch anything about him because
You have to watch the Zac Efron one.
I know.
You have to.
I know. He's just.
If Ted Bundy had Grindr, I'd be dead. I would have been a victim.
He was smart though. We'll have to do a Ted Bundy episode.
We'll do a Ted Bundy episode.
That might have to be a you episode because I know about it.
I'll just talk about how hot Zac Efron is and how he would have murdered me if I were a young gay in the 70s. I would be dead. I would be dead right now.
On that
note. So how would you murder? No, I'm sorry. How would you want to be murdered if you had to be? If I was going to be murdered,
I'd want to be fast. I would not want to be slow. So I think I would want, oh God, whatever is fast. There's probably multiple different modes of it being fast, but probably
I think like a gun to the head.
Yeah, gun to the head or like gun to the chest or something. I would not want to be stabbed. I would not want to be like choked because there's a degree where you're still like coherent for a period of time.
But they say you're coherent even after you die for like 8 minutes, no matter what.
Really?
Yeah, because your brain electricity is still kind of going through your body for a couple minutes.
You still there's stuff that happens after you die that. Yeah. What about you? I don't know. For me, it's fast.
Well, I think I would want it to be fast. Yeah, I don't know that anybody's gonna say like, yeah, draw it out, but I don't know.
I mean, if you say draw it out, I'm gonna think, are you okay?
Are you okay? Yeah.
Like, why would you want that?
But the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. Part of me wants to say like I would want to go like like the Ted Bundy way where it's like maybe like during sex or something. So at least I go out on a high note, right? So as I'm doing something fun,
right,
and enjoyable, and then like shoot me while we're having sex or something. I don't think I would want to just. Yeah, I would not. I would be like choked or
right. I would not want to know that.
I don't
want to
see it coming. Yeah, I don't want to see it coming.
Yeah, I would not want to know it's happening. The one way I'll tell you I don't want to ever be murdered or die by is by drowning. I think that is
literally what I was just thinking.
Most terrifying way, in my opinion, to die.
One of my most terrifying dreams is that I am crawling like down a hole, like that's going, or I guess it'd be going the other way. Like it'd be going kind of up, so I guess I'm crawling up a hole, but then it starts to fill with water, and so to get out, you have to crawl back through the water. Oh, I hate that. That's awful.
That's something. No, I just think drowning is like, because you're kind of you know what's happening, it's happening to you, and you either have to just let it happen or you have to like. Well,
and your body will make you breathe in that water.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like once your body will take over and make you breathe, but you're in water.
Yeah, I can't. Anytime I watch a show that has like somebody drown or be like struggling, and I'm a good swimmer, like I could not do that. Yeah. Any other way, I think I could be fine with, but drowning would be the one.
Yeah. Wow, what a messed up way to end the pod. Wow.
I was like, that's a morbid ending for this one.
Maybe we should lighten it.
What's your all-time favorite TV show? Go. Or your comfort show that you watch over and over when you like have anxiety? Because that's my toxic trait, is watching the same thing over and over again.
Oh, well, I don't know. This will probably tell a lot about me, but Nurse Jackie.
I've never seen it, but I've heard it's very good.
Oh my God.
It's been recommended to me as well.
It's not an uplifting show whatsoever.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It's
not
it's
uplifting,
very good.
But I think it's very accurate to show like substance use and just mental illness overall, and how it like substance use affects families and people around. Like it was so good, and it was so messed up. It's like one of those shows where you're like, it can't get worse. It does.
It does. Worse. Good to know.
But so not necessarily an uplifting show, but
yes.
What's yours? It's probably The Office.
It is. You're 100% correct. You didn't even have to.
I didn't have to ask you.
It's probably The Office or Parks and Rec.
I do love Parks and Rec.
I tend to go between the two. Right now, I'm on the Parks and Rec-ish. And New Girl is kind of falling in that category for me. If you've ever seen New Girl, love that show. But yeah, it's Parks and Rec or The Office.
Who's your favorite Parks and Rec character?
Ron Swanson.
I can see that.
I think I am sometimes Ron Swanson.
I can see that.
Who's yours?
April.
Yeah, you're her too. I think I'm a strange mix.
That's why we make such a good team.
I feel like I'm a mix of April and Ron, although I think I teeter more on like the Ron side of everything. Like I just am very I don't care about your stuff. Like just like come up, do your job, and then a lot of times I'm like April, where I just But you are 100% April.
That's why, because they made a good team.
Yeah, they did.
And we make a good team.
That's so true.
That's so good.
Well,
wow.
Another episode down in the books.
Another episode down in the books.
Cheers.
Don't forget to follow our Insta.
Yes, our Instagram, Two Tired Therapists.
Two Tired Therapists.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, we'll see you at the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye.